every teacher is free to teach badly, so why are they not free to teach better? What's stopping us? That's something to think about. For anybody, when you do things which matter to that person, they do it. When they do things that don't matter to that person, they don't do it. It's a ridiculous idea to think that you can do any nonsensical stuff and people will be willing to follow you just because you are in a position of power compared to them. What I am scared of is that the children of the poor will be taught by computers and the children of the rich will be taught by human beings. Do you use assessment uh, to serve students or to serve yourself, the teacher?
Welcome to the Learning Circle, the ultimate video podcast for educators and parents who want to unleash the full potential of children. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of learning with the help of thought leaders who will share their knowledge and stories with us. This is your host Kavleen Kaur, and I'm excited to take you on this journey. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and entertained.
Welcome back to the Learning Circle. Today we have the privilege of speaking with someone who has made tremendous contribution to education, not just in India but across Asia and Africa. Mr. Subir Shukla is the principal coordinator of Group Ignus and a true visionary in the field of education. His journey into the world of education began in 1986 in a tribal village in MP. Since then, he has helped shape educational policies and practices at the highest levels, from serving as the founding editor of the National Center for Children's Literature to leading initiatives as the chief consultant for the DPEP and as an educational quality advisor to the Ministry of Human Resource Development. His work has shaped key national policies, including contributions to the RTE quality framework and advisory roles with the NCRT and NITI Aayog. His influence extends to curriculum design, textbook development, and teacher training. He is also an accomplished author of several children's books. Join us as we dive deep into Mr. Subir Shukla's incredible journey, his insights on educational reform, and the future of learning. Welcome to our channel, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, you have 3 decades of experience in the world of education, and during those 3 decades, you must have seen a lot of transformation in the world and hopefully in the world of education as well. So, I would like to start with the evolution of your educational philosophy, how that has happened over the years, what were the key experiences, the key people, and the pivotal movements that led to the evolution of your educational philosophy.
Thank you, Kavleen. Pleasure to be speaking with you and with all listeners who are part of this. So, as you mentioned, I began my journey by living in a remote tribal village. The reason why I went there is because growing up in the 1980s, there was so much poverty all around that you felt if you were not doing something about it, you did not have any business to be alive. And looking around, one felt that why is the right kind of education not available to all children? In fact, only 40% children were in school at the time, and most of them would drop out by the end of school. Uh, when I shifted to a tribal area, I realized that a real problem was that though we want education to reach everybody, but the kind of education we have does not work in the situation that we face on the ground. So you want to teach reading and writing, but there is no paper, there are no books, for example. I remember once when I went to collect a child who had been absent for a few days. I found that the father was lying on the ground covered with a sheet. The whole family had not eaten for a few days, sorry, and the mother was away looking for some roots from the forest. And I had come to say, come to the school. Now, that was traumatic, but what was amazing to me was that a few days later, the child did come to school. And the question I asked myself is, what are we doing in school that is worthy of the child's time? And this is a question that really remained with me even and remains even now with me. It's also connected with the fact that I spent a lot of time with children outside of school. For example, they would go herding cattle in the field. Now they manage 100 animals. They, whereas adults like us can't even distinguish between the two, two goats or two cows look alike, and you can't make out the difference enough. They uh, uh, they know when to turn back, where the water holes are, and in different seasons how to manage. It's a complex task. This is done by a 10-year-old, but that same 10-year-old who knows so much about the forest, about animals, about leaves, animals, that child, when it comes to my class, is suddenly seen as a dumb child, someone who doesn't know anything, or many teachers who feel that this child cannot learn anything. So I began with that. How can we get education to each child, and what would the right education be like for children, especially from backgrounds of this kind? But over some years, as I started working on a slightly larger scale. Then I realized that though we have got a better understanding of how children learn, we also need to understand how teachers learn. In fact, learn is probably not enough of a descriptive word. What we really want to know is how do teachers change so that they become the kind of teachers our children need. I remember once that a teacher said, "Why are you imposing freedom on me?" And "Swatantrata kyun thop rahe hain?" And the reason is that this teacher is expected to think on his own and deliver in a situation which he doesn't control. He has no control over infrastructure, what will come when, and so on. And so responsibility is dumped without the resources, the authority to do things. At the same time, teachers also bring their own social biases and prejudices into the class. For example, they believe these children are not capable of learning, or they are Gawar just because they are from a tribal background. So then that became a big question for me. How do teachers learn? And it took some years to sort that out. And I think in 10 years we did get to know. But then slowly we began to realize that wherever teachers change seriously in a big way, a lot of people in the system, they have a lot of issues. And this is a problem in the sense that, for example, officials find that teachers who were very docile when they were not teaching well or not teaching, suddenly they are more bold because now they're teaching and getting results. So they won't take nonsense. They won't be open to corruption, for example. And so, in a sense, nobody loves, empowered teachers really in our system. And it's not only the people in the system in a general sense, it is society. I, again, a senior political leader once said, I won't mention who or where, said that if every child is highly educated in India, who is going to clean your toilets? I've had officials at the district level tell me, if these children study well, then our sons are not going to get jobs. And we live in a society which you might have noticed when mobile phones came, and suddenly mobile phones became cheap, and maid servants or sabziwalas started to have mobile phones. A lot of people were very unhappy. Look at these people now also have it. So I think this innate sense of hierarchy is something which we seriously need to work on. So now, in terms of evolution, I would say that I have gone from how children learn and how teachers learn also to how societies and systems learn, and I think that is the focus that I have now.
Right. So you touched upon several points there. Although we are talking about education of children, but of course that doesn't happen in a vacuum. So there is, of course, the teachers, but the entire society, the norms which are there, and several points that you touched upon there, which need each of it is a separate discussion point. But I would like to talk about the teachers, the change in the teachers that you mentioned. That although we talk about the professional development of teachers and there's a lot of discussion, a lot of focus, a lot of effort, but then the point you mentioned about not everybody welcoming those changes, right? Because a trained teacher would have their own set of insights into how things should be done. They'll not be following the status quo. So how do you how do you see if that has evolved at all? How do you see it evolving in the current times also?
Yeah, so I think, in the beginning, I'll first talk about the work I have done, and then I will talk about how it is in general outside. Because I think many things have happened and we have made advancements, but they do not reflect in the system as a whole. So, in the beginning, the understanding was that teachers need new knowledge, new skills. But then it became quite clear that, simply knowing the right thing is not equal to doing the right thing. So, so for example, if it is written no smoking, then you will find that however literate a person is, many people are still smoking. So it is not connected with knowledge. It is something more than that. So how do you change inside as a person is a real question. And that's something to seriously work on. And we realized many things. One of them is that uh, teachers that we believe should be different in their own life, they have never experienced a single person who has faith in them as a learner. They've only experienced teachers or adults or senior officials who believe that they are idiots, they will not learn, and they need to be told what to do. And if they are not told, they are going to make mistakes. Nobody is willing to invest time in them and engage with them, encourage them, see them as persons, as people. So I think, that's one very important thing. And one simple method of actually addressing this is that try not to go into any professional development process. It could be a meeting, it could be a training program, it could be a visit to a school. Don't begin any such event by trying to tell teachers anything. Instead, just listen, ask a question. Ask question like, what exactly do you do? What do you find difficult? What are your successes? What kind of help do you need? Is there anything I can do? Once you've talked to the teacher like this, you will find they have opened up. Then you can connect with what they need and you can say what you want to say, and you will find there is a deeper exchange. So one is to connect with the teachers as a person and not just as a subordinate who has to sort of really follow. The second thing is, now I'm taking a slightly systemic perspective, which is this, which is again learned by very sort of hard effort and a lot of mistakes on some large scale, uh, which is that, competence is not equal to performance. People believe if a person is very competent, he will perform well. So, if, for example, if somebody has an MEd, that person will be a better teacher with somebody with a DLEd. DLEd is only, after 12th you do 1 or 2 years or whatever, and you are trained in a diet. So that's not true. The person with a DLEd might be so grateful that he has the opportunity to teach and a job that he might be actually more interested in teaching, whereas the person with MEd might feel I'm in the wrong place and I should be somewhere else, and he may not have the motivation to teach. So, the first realization is that uh, competence plus minimum enabling conditions equals performance. That two teachers might be performing equally well, but one does not receive academic support on time. So, that person's results will be poorer. So, if you want actually to do professional development in such a way that it leads to results, you also have to provide supportive conditions to teachers. So if we want professional development to happen, we have to look at all aspects: change as a person, development of competence, enabling conditions, performance, and then look at supportive conditions, and then look at effectiveness, which is the result that teachers generate. So mostly TPD is teacher professional development is seen in a very sort of limited way, and that is one reason why we do not see change. So this is what we have learned, and we've done wherever we have done, we've had results. Now, coming to what is currently happening in the country, unfortunately, with the opening up of the education system to a lot of non state entities, and also with CSR coming in. So, what is happening is that a lot of agencies are now involved in teacher development without having been through 20, 30 years of experience. And they are doing the kind of thing that were done in 1980s and 1990s, or they believe they are doing innovation. They think they are doing it, but those are things which might have been done already before. So I see a lot of disconnected teacher development inputs. Somebody comes in and talks of only social emotional development, and that's it. Somebody comes and does only project based learning, and that's it. Somebody talks of TLM. Somebody comes and does foundational learning. Does it add up to a whole? We can't be sure. Like a teacher told me once in Haryana in Rohtak, that in the morning I do the FLN program of one organization. Afternoon I do the FLN program of another dad, and on Saturday I do a third one of another third agency. So a lot of input is not equal to a high quality input. It has to be balanced, connected, and integrated with each other for it to have serious results.
Right. So, you gave us an equation for TPT, which is a competency plus the enabling conditions, right? And that is equal to performance. So, that is the equation. And here, like I see, when we talk about evolution of education, we see that you mentioned that a lot of CSR activities is happening, but they may be counterproductive, like you said, because they are all working in silos and they are doing their own stuff and going away. So you mentioned that starting point should be talking to teachers, taking their input about what is required, and then developing the training program accordingly. And maybe there has to be more, cohesiveness between the different companies who are offering programs to the same set of teachers, right? So probably this is one message for all the corporates and all the people who are involved in TPT to actually, tailor your programs according to the needs of the teachers and also be aligned with what the other parties are offering. So then only the enabling conditions, it would actually be enabling, because otherwise the teachers may be getting mixed or even opposing messages, right? So this was for the corporates, and you talk about the systemic changes also, which is more for the education department, the school stakeholders. When we talk about teachers themselves, how should they make sense of the the opportunities which are available for TPT, but also, sort of remove the noise or make sense of the clutter which is there in this space, and actually develop the capabilities that they may need, because systemic changes, they may take time. The corporates, they have their own agenda, so all that, of course, I think you have spoken about it. There may be others speaking about it, but that may take some time. So meanwhile, the teachers, what should they be doing? What should their approach be for the TPT?
One good thing is that, now I'm talking more of government school teachers at least, that every teacher is free to teach badly. So why are they not free to teach better? What's stopping us? That's something to think about. And I would say that no teacher becomes a teacher deliberately to become a bad teacher. So I have faith that even if suppose teaching was not the first option, it doesn't matter. You come in, you have a right to professional satisfaction. You have a right to feel successful, and that's something to look at. So here are a few things that I would suggest to teachers. One is, the favorite quotation of mine is that no teacher is living to fulfill the dream of teacher trainers. Is living, or of society, or of CSR groups. They're living to fulfill their own dreams. So first, as a teacher, be clear what is your dream. What does success mean for you? Does it mean that children like you? Does it mean that your children do well? Does it mean that you're able to go deeper? Does it mean that you look forward to coming to school every day? What does success mean? I think it's important to sort that out for yourself. As I said, you're going to spend a long time teaching. You have a right to have a good time teaching. So decide for yourself what is it that is equal to a good time. Otherwise, you'll suffer. Next, ask the common four questions which are related to your work, which is, what exactly do I have to do? So now this is a big problem in education. Everybody says you must encourage children to be active. So what does it mean to be active? Jump up and down. That is not active. So what does active exactly mean? Just ask yourself questions like this. Somebody will come and say that you must encourage children to develop their own understanding. Again, what does this mean? You must do projects. What does it mean? So everything, I think, unless you are able to define it in very clear terms, unless you can say it in terms in which you can visualize doing it in the class, you don't have a sense of what you have to do. So whoever does, whether somebody else mentions it to you or you think to yourself, be as concrete and clear as possible. Second, ask yourself, why exactly should I do it this way? Is there a theoretical reason for it? Is there a practical reason for it? Is my condition like that? Is my context like that? Does it increase my chance of success? Third, you might come across things which are done by some other teacher somewhere else. Ask yourself, how do I do it in my own situation, in my own way? And fourthly, ask yourself, how will I know that I am succeeding? So you must have some criteria of success. For example, children will respond in this way, and so on. Yeah. So I think teachers need to ask these four questions to themselves, and that's another thing I would suggest to teachers is that whatever change you want to make, when you list down in terms of all the things you have to do differently, you might find you have 20, 30, even 40 changes to make in your class. Don't try to make all of them in one go. It doesn't work. So ask yourself which of these are the three simplest ones that I can do, and do them. When you feel in 2 3 days that you made those changes, then do the next two or three, and in this way you can make all the 40 changes step by step. But if you try to, and don't try to do what is more important first, try to do what is easier first. This is the problem. We try to do the most important thing. Just to give you one example, you go to a training and you come back, and you will find that in the training you were taught about how to use teaching learning materials. You were taught how to do activities which involve reading and writing, and you were taught how to use activities which are mainly oral in nature. Now everybody says TLM is important, TLM is important. So you start using teaching learning material and you start doing that first. And you will find that that is very difficult to do, because you did not do something which was easier than that first. So the easiest thing to do is the oral activity, which is, for example, you tell children, take a look all around and what can you see which starts with A, or which is round, or which is green. So in this approach, what is happening is that children are sitting where they are sitting, you are standing where you're standing. It's not different from your previous work. It's easy to do, but is a little spark. Next, you want move on to things which involve reading and writing. For example, you ask them to, in a drawing, to look at something, or you say that in this page the letter comes so many times, or you give them three letters and say make words out of it. Now what happens is that you have to move around, you have to give instructions in more detail, you have to move around, you have to see if children are able to understand and do it. This is slightly more complex than the previous one, because they were speaking and you could hear, but now they're writing, you can't make out who's doing and who's not doing, so you have to move around. It's more complex. Now suppose you want to do the same thing, that make words using letters but with cards. Now this is teaching learning material. Now you have to make groups, you have to make seating arrangements, you have to give instructions, you have to distribute the cards, and you have to again say how to do it. Then you have to look at their work. It is, you understand, it's far more complicated than the previous one. So I think it's important for teachers to know that they should start with what is in their reach. They should make those changes, and I think they should look forward to feeling successful, trying something new. Always, for those who are in the education world, they would have known of what is known as zone of proximal development, which is something which is slightly difficult for you but not too difficult for you. So there is a challenge. It's interesting. It's exciting, and you aim for that. Don't aim for something which is too difficult, and don't aim for the same thing you did yesterday. That's so boring. As I said, you have a right to have an interesting challenge and work on it. I think it's in your hands, is what I tell teachers. When you are actually teaching, nobody's coming and looking at you. Maybe they come once in a while. So you are free to do a lot of things, and you're free to improve yourself. You have a right to do so, and I think it's always a better life when you're trying to do that.
And more enjoyable, more impactful also.
More impactful. And okay, I'll just one more thing that I will mention briefly is that uh, a lot of the time, and this is as much to teacher educators as anyone else, uh, the feeling is whatever is being suggested is going to make teachers work more difficult, more complex. But actually, our job is really to make the teachers' work easier. So, can I suggest a way in which children do certain things in such a way that teacher becomes free to help other children who are falling behind? So that makes teacher's life easier. Can I create an activity where children are engaged so much that teacher gets time to do other things, so on? So there are things which are, or instead of asking teachers to make material, I will simply say, use what is already around you. So I think if you can create a set of pathways and tasks which make teachers' life easier instead of more difficult, then I remember once long back, and this is important to mention because I went to a demonstration school of a regional institute of education, and they said, "Sir, doing activity-based teaching is very difficult." So I found that what was happening was that the teacher was doing a poem, say about an elephant, and he was walking like an elephant, and children were just sitting and watching. So what teacher was doing all the work, children was just inactive. So obviously it is difficult. So I think it's important to make sure that teachers' life become easier. Children do more work, teachers do less.
Yes, so that is a very empowering message, provided we do it in the right spirit. So, when we talk about experiential learning, it has to be understood precisely that, the students have to experience them. Of course, the teacher is a facilitator, but instead of teacher becoming an elephant, it is actually the children who should be doing that part, and they can do it much better. And in between, the teacher can facilitate and comment and share her wisdom, her guidance on the activities. So that is that again brings us to another thing that you said at the beginning, that the teachers sometimes say that don't give us the freedom, but with freedom, if you also allow them to learn, to make mistakes, because for them also this is new. It's the way that we naturally learn, but they haven't been doing it since so many years. So now they are again going back into that phase and learning, and they should also be allowed to make mistake and learn with the children. How should we be more accepting as parents, as educators, of our own mistakes and the mistakes of the teachers?
True. So several things. The first thing that comes to my mind is a message I like to give everyone is that let's make new mistakes. You know, don't keep making the same old one. So that's a sign that you're moving forward at least. But we are not a mistake tolerant nation and society, and that's one. When I raised this issue earlier of how does society learn, this is a big challenge that we all face. Our society is very hierarchical. We expect children to listen to adults. One of the first things we try to teach is respect your elders. What they mean by we mean by respect is follow what they say and not accept them or admire them. So it is. Uh, and if you look at our education system, it's a command and control system. Whether it is a private school or a government system, the feeling is that everybody is accountable to the person above. Children are accountable to teachers, teachers are accountable to principal or officials. But actually, teachers have a job because children are there, and officials have a job because there are teachers. So, who should be accountable to whom is the question, right? So this is therefore not that easy. And very often, what happens is that why people are not tolerant of teachers' mistakes is because uh, they feel that they have to preserve their place in hierarchy. If I'm a school inspector, I mean, we don't have inspector. But if I'm let's say, education official, actually, I cannot do what the teacher is asked to do. I cannot be sitting there with children with three groups and actually trying to do some poem or story. It's very difficult. But how do I preserve my position, or how do I appear that I know something by just trying to point out mistakes of the teacher or trying to behave in a superior hierarchical manner? So this whole thing is essentially less about the teacher's action, but more about preserving the hierarchy that exists. That is the problem. And do you know there are states in India, well, not a few, but most, where teachers are told by the SCRTs what they have to teach on which day. This is ridiculous because in a tribal area, in a flood hit area, in a city, or everywhere you expect teachers to teach the same thing. And it also stands to reason nobody has to be an educationist to know that you cannot expect teachers to teach all the children the same thing in the same way, in the same method, and get the same results everywhere. It is not going to happen. So that a minimum degree of contextualization, autonomy is critical to success. By following instructions, teachers cannot succeed. So we need to move out of the way. And the way to improve, and since I'm talking about the limitations, I should also talk about how to improve upon the situation. And I'm talking of something which has actually worked, so it's not in the air. So if I'm a principal, or if I'm a block education officer, or if I'm a district education officer, I will ask teachers this: uh, tell me, in the next 6 months, what improvement or changes would you like to make in your class? What will make you feel you are doing better? And tell me what I should do to support you in making that improvement. And I should do that. And I will find there's a dramatic change in what teachers are doing.
There's a sense of ownership then when you actually ask the teacher, right up front.
And in fact, we've tried this out. There was a large project which ran in 34,000 schools in Tamil Nadu. When I did an assessment of it, teachers said that actually we do not feel very comfortable with the pedagogy, but we are doing it because we are treated like human beings. The minister and secretary sat on the floor in more than 100 places. They talked with teachers and they said, we have not supported you enough. Therefore, you tell us. So, I think ultimately it is less about methodology, it is more about what you feel as a person, as a teacher. Are you motivated to do it? And there's a saying, I mean, okay, maybe I'm making it up, but the saying is that if a teacher loves her children, then any old method will do, because children will respond, children will feel that. In the same way, if a teacher feels cared for, valued, wanted as a person or as a human being, they will find a path out. And if we cannot make that part happen, then all the great data, so-called learning science based, evidence based methodology, all the fantastic materials, all the AI, all the technology driven stuff, that is not going to have any effect, because ultimately what happens in the class is what the teacher does. What the teacher does dependent this does depend on what she feels. If you're not changing that, you're not changing things. So for all supervisors and parents and others, I would say that enter into a partnership with teachers, not try to have a command and control hierarchical relationship. Do not feel that, oh, we are paying them, they should do what we tell them to do. Instead, engage, and you will find that you are getting much better results than you are currently.
This is very powerful because uh, autonomy, sense of ownership, and breakdown of a control and command structure would actually allow the teachers to implement the learnings that they may have but maybe too scared to implement. And they are the first contact with the children, especially the younger ones. So their feeling of comfort, their feeling of confidence, and ability to implement what they have learned is key here. So this is, thanks for sharing this, sir. We have been, you are simultaneously touching upon the challenges that we have and also how to overcome them at multiple levels. So you talked about, the parents entering into a partnership, the school authorities removing the command and control structure as much as possible, and then another thing that you mentioned about teachers trying should try to start small, start from wherever they are instead of implementing some big change. Implement the change that is easiest to do, that maybe most with the material that is available. Once they start seeing the results, probably they'll be more motivated to implement the bigger changes also, right? So thanks for sharing that. So we have been talking about the challenges, we have been talking about the present system, we have also talked about how things have changed over the years. And in between all this, the child who is actually the why we are doing all this thing. So we talk about, this 21st century education, we talk about hands-on learning, experiential learning. You also mentioned that, our system is very hierarchical. We are still, even for children, we are still trying to create followers, right? Although we talk about critical thinking, we talk about creative learning, experiential learning, but what we are still doing, it's still marks, assessment focused education, right? So regarding the children, what is the one thing that you would suggest when a teacher enters into a classroom, and sees a group of 35, 40 students, how can they prepare children who are real, true global citizens who can become the creators of tomorrow?
I'll give you a couple of examples. Once I went to a school when we used to have non-formal education in our country, uh, eh, where which the school was a night school run for children who were child workers, laborers, and teacher said, "No, these children they don't speak much. It's very difficult to work with them." They were older, so I started by asking them, "What are the tools you use?" Now, this was in Kerala. They were Malayalam speaking, and I was speaking through a translator, interpreter, and they named the tools, and I said, "I don't know which is for what. You tell me." They explained that. Then I said, "If I had to make this kind of building, which tools will I use?" And slowly we started talking. Now, what happened was that these tools were something that these children were very much experts in. And I asked teachers some of the things that children said. I asked them to write. I asked teachers to write on the board. Then I asked children what is written where, and slowly that became very good reading material for them. And they started very within matters of minutes. They started picking out letters of the alphabet or whole words and so on. And teachers were quite surprised. I'll give you another example, and then I'll talk about the principles that are involved in this. I went to a school in Dharavi, where again it's a slum area. Teachers again said that, oh, these kids they are backward, they don't know anything. So I asked children, what all do you do at home? They gave me a long list. Then I said, what do you like to eat? And somehow it so happened that some kids said, we like to have biryani. So I said, but where do you get biryani? You make it? So they said sometimes we make it, but very often we buy it. I asked them, where do you buy it from? So there was one biryani seller. Then I said, tell me about this biryani seller. They had a lot of things to say. Okay, now here's the interesting part. So I asked them that, how is biryani made? Tell me. These are all class 3, 4 kids. Huh? And one boy stood up first and he described his way of making it. Then one girl stood up and challenged him. She said, no, you do not put atta in biryani. He said, no, you do. There's a better recipe. So on. So I got 5, 7 recipes from some boys, some girls, and teachers were all standing looking very shocked. But then I said, but do you think this biryani wala makes profit? So they said, of course he does. They said, how do you know? So they immediately started calculating what he gets, why, and then they made. And teacher said, but they have so much difficulty in just addition, subtraction. They're doing all of this. So, the point is, when for anybody, when you do things which matter to that person, they do it. When they do things that don't matter to that person, they don't do it. It's a ridiculous idea to think that you can do any nonsensical stuff and people will be willing to follow you just because you are in a position of power compared to them. So so if I want children firstly to grow, to learn, to participate, and later I'll talk a bit on how to become world citizen. Then the first thing I have to do is I have to make use of what is called the child's fund of knowledge. Children bring a lot of experience, any child. So a child with disability, you might think she doesn't know anything, but she knows a lot about the moods of her caregiver. When is that caregiver angry or happy? I would start with that. I went to some remote village in Africa, in Nigeria, and this Boko Haram territory, that terrorist affected area in a way. And the teacher said these kids, she was trying to teach them something to do with letters of the alphabet. And again, she was finding it difficult to get children to speak. So I asked her to speak in their language and translate what I said. I asked children to name all the things they had eaten this morning for breakfast. And then I said, if you ate anything in which the letter A appears, tell me. And suddenly kids were very excited. Each one wanted to say, and then long list came up. I said, in just 2 questions, the classroom changed. What happened? Because instead of discussing what I know, what I think, what I want to say, I'm discussing what children know, what children think, what they want to say. So it sounds simple. It's not that easy to do, I'm sure, for a lot of people. But I think just being aware, listening, and knowing that every child comes with a rich, rich experience which you may not have had, and you would never have perhaps, and wanting to get that. At a higher level, for example, in class 9, I found that students in Hardoi district, they have a lot of experience of how sugarcane juice is converted into jaggery. And there's a lot of heat transfer process going on over there. So if I'm teaching them physics, that's very useful experience, right? So this is the first thing I would do. And secondly, I would want my children to continue to be curious, to be problem solvers. I would ask a lot of questions that start with three words. I will ask a lot of questions with why, and I will ask a lot of questions with how, and I will ask a lot of questions with if.
Okay.
And I think that if in across all subjects, not just only in language or not only in one class, but overall. And I think that by encouraging children to think for themselves, and finally, if I really want children to be global world class, and that has to do with also the vision of education, I suppose. But to me, a highly effective class is one where we involve children in a lot of the decisions that are made. So, especially from class 2, 3 onwards, I think it's quite possible to put a list on the board and tell children that these are the things that we want to cover or learn about in the coming month. And if we do it in this way, we can do it in 3 weeks. If we can do it in this way in 2 weeks, if we take our own time, we'll take it in 5 weeks. What do you want to do? Suppose children say, no, we want to do it quickly, then all right, we'll do it like that. So it's in that decision, children are part. Then I will say, but how will you know that you're learning and we are going quickly? Then they will say, okay, we'll tell you when we want to be. So, then what happens is you have assessment by demand in a class like that. Then you say, but what is the use of your learning if your friend doesn't learn? I will count you as having learned only if everybody in the class is learned. So you find out a good way that, you make sure all children are learning. So then anybody who's falling behind becomes the responsibility of the whole class. So I create a collaborative class, a class that takes decisions, that takes initiative. My work is much easier because my children are every day waiting and saying, no, you have to do this or you have to tell me that, whatever. So I think all of those, uh, entering again, just as I was saying that we have to enter into partnership with teachers. Teachers have to enter into partnership with children. You remember I told you about that teacher about the elephant poem in the class, and my comment was that it is not only the two elephants, big elephants, but all the elephants who have to dance. So in the same way, it is not only the teacher who teaches, but all children help each other. They are resource persons to each other. So if you do that, what do you create? You create children who can handle new situations, who can take decisions, who can work together, who can work alone, who can imagine, who can solve problems. Isn't that the definition of a 21st century world ready child who is a global citizen who can adjust with others? So it's within our hands. We don't need some fancy, fantastic, lot of material, expensive thing. We just need to change our approach a little.
That's a beautiful thought there and very empowering that we want the children to be innovators, to be decision makers tomorrow in their job, but we don't give them the practice. So with this approach, we are making them decision makers of their entire learning process, right? We are asking them to evaluate the various criterias and collaborate among themselves and then decide the way they want to learn, decide when they want to be assessed. So the power, the ownership again we are giving to children, and of course they'll make mistakes, but they'll learn with from those mistakes, and next year they'll do better. And you talked about three questions we should ask: why, how, and if. This if really intrigues me, and I think if we want to imagine a truly transformative school of tomorrow, what would be your wish list if you are given the opportunity to create that truly transformative school?
But I think there are many changes which are happening in the world. People talk mainly of technology, but there are other changes which have happened which we don't talk enough about. In the 1940s, around the time of the World War, there were only around 40 countries which were democratic countries. Others were all some form of dictatorship, or a king or somebody was there. And now we have 120 or whatever, very large number of. So the big shift that is happening in the world is towards the way we are organized as people, as society. We are no more under one big ruler. We are not in a hierarchical situation. So if you look at the school system, somehow it reflected that kind of non-democratic uh, political social system. And the whole purpose of school was essentially, at whenever it was created, to reinforce that. But if we have moved out of that, then it is not the business of the school to continue to do that. That is the first thing that I would say when I want to use the word transformative. Any transformative school and school system, it will be more democratic in nature. It's not by putting more technology you don't become more advanced. You can use technology to continue to dominate others. That is not a better use of technology. If you use technology to become better partners, then that is a transformative use of technology. So that's the point that I want to make first. Secondly, in terms of a school, so in any a school is comprising of actually three things, and those three things are three elements are: what is the nature of relationships, who participates, and what is the nature of relationships. Second, what is the nature of processes, and third, is the school working towards whatever is considered higher order learning outcome at that time. So let me explain each of these. Who participates and at what level? So is our parents and community part of this? Are they merely consumers? Are they partners? Are they knowledge partners? So, for example, if I am in a rural area and my children's parents, say, for example, someone is a truck driver, that truck driver knows a lot about the geography of India more than my geography teacher does. If somebody is a health worker, they know a lot about the body. If somebody is a potter, they know a lot about soils and how they react to water. So if I look around, every community member has some knowledge which I can use in my class. So can I bring in the community as knowledge partners? Can I bring in students as decision making partners in the process? Is the relationship between teachers and children two-way in nature? Are they mutually supportive of each other? Are they partners? Is the head teacher or the local official, whoever it is, working as a partner with the school? Is it two-way? Is there partnership across schools where they're sharing their experiences and solving problems together? Maybe two schools are in an area where there are tend to be floods, and one school found some way to deal with it, another school also does the same, and so on. So that sense of togetherness, that sense of relationship, that sense of participating in decision making, contributing in learning, being proactive. So I think the nature of relationships is what I would call transformative, and this is aligned with what I mentioned earlier of a shift to a democratic, futuristic perspective. The second part is about the processes. There are many processes that happen in school. Teaching learning is a process. Assessment is a process. So is involving community or school management. These are all processes. How do they happen? I'll talk right now only of teaching and learning, and there's something I've spoken elsewhere, so I'll be brief here, which is, do you generate exciting, interesting experiences for children which are challenging that they want to participate in? Do you encourage reflection? Do you encourage application? And do you consolidate learning from time to time? Do you use assessment uh, to serve students or to serve yourself, the teacher? There's a difference. I can do assessment and say that, look, the assessment is showing you are very bad and you're not listening to me. That is serving me. I can do assessment and say it looks like this point was not clear to you. Maybe I didn't do it correctly. I'm going to do it again. Now I'm serving students. There's a difference. So how are the different processes? And I know many of the things that I'm saying are extremely idealistic and sound very odd and impossible in today's world. But I have seen much of this also actually happen. I have been to schools where teacher literally has to push children away at 5 p.m. because they don't want to go home.
So that's a truly transformative school, actually.
And the third thing I mentioned is the learning higher order learning. Now, so when I teach language, if I'm talking only about grammar, spelling, handwriting, then I'm not really doing language learning. Say, for example, a signboard painter has very good handwriting, but you don't necessarily want to read his thoughts. Gandhiji had very bad handwriting, but you want to read his thoughts. So, the point is that language is about what your worldview is, what you are as a person, how you connect. Do you raise your voice when you should raise your voice at injustice, for example? Do you use language to collaborate, to solve problems, to create, and to take all of us forward? So, if I am not doing all of that, if I'm doing the mechanical part of, let's call the mechanistic aspect of language, then I'm not doing seriously good language learning. So, every subject is like that. In science, content doesn't matter. The ability to apply scientific literacy to situations which you have not come across is far more important than just the content. You can repeat the content is there in a computer. In the same way, a calculator can do many things faster and better than you, but you can take decisions. So, what is it that we want to teach, which really matters, is the question for us. So, in a school which focuses on higher order learning, which has certain kinds of processes, which has relationships of certain kind, that is what I would call as a transformative school for the 21st century. Just to mention, it it does not need technology. Technology is merely a tool. You can use technology to do all the wrong things. You can use technology to do all the right things.
Yes, sir. This is uh, this is really empowering. You talked about these three things: relationship, processes, and the higher order learning. Although you said that this can be done without technology, but technology can definitely enable this, right? It can be a tool, it can be an enabler. But with these three things that you have talked about, then there is a lot of talk nowadays of teachers being replaced by AI. When we talk about personalized learning and AI teachers, AI tutors, then there is this thought about teachers being replaced. But these three things are something which each one of these have a human element in this. So of course, even in a transformative school of today or tomorrow, whatever that tomorrow is, I think we don't need to be scared of technology or AI or any aspect, because relationships, processes, and higher order thinking, these are the domains of human. These are the capabilities that we human have, and it can be further developed in our children also.
Yes, but what I am scared of is that, it might already be happening, but it might happen quite sooner than we think. That the children of the poor will be taught by computers, and the children of the rich will be taught by human beings. If you look at Silicon Valley, all the big tech people, they make sure their children don't engage with computers for a long time. They have schools where a lot of a lot of human interaction is present. They insist on that. Even Salman Khan, who is famous for Khan Academy, when he has made his school, he in the beginning at least he did not use technology himself. So that is so the point is that while that will happen, but uh, what is happening in the space of technology in education is not an education driven thing. It's a vendor driven thing. It is those who are selling technology who may not have education in their blood, but do have commerce in their blood. They are the ones who are pushing it, and many very often leaders, decision makers feel that perhaps we'll get better results, and that's a lure. And it might just happen that therefore there will be this. Also, there's also something glamorous about putting some robot with speaking voice like a teacher in the class, but in reality that might be taking us backward, and it won't really help. And uh, just to sort of do a little historical recap, this idea that technology can replace the teacher is a very old idea. When it when radio was first invented, it was thought that the teachers will not be required. When television was invented, then it was thought they are not required. When satellite television came, then it was thought that teachers will not be required. When computers came, it was thought teachers will not be required. When internet came, it was thought they are not going to be required. So it's not that it's going to happen right away, but the tendency will be to find some technological solution when actually a human solution is required.
Yes, your fear may be valid. Although what I see is that technology may be useful in cases where a human intervention is not possible or not optimum.
that may be a solution, but of course not as a replacement of a human teacher, especially in rural areas where you have mentioned that there is a lot of this local knowledge. A truck driver has knowledge of the geography, which no Google map can replace. So we cannot and should not replace the local teachers, the rural teachers, with technology. But of course we can complement the non-availability of teachers with some technology. So there has to be a proper planning and hand holding and implementation. This again brings us back to what you said in the initial part, that the corporates who are offering their solution for the education world, apart from the commerce hat they wear, they also have to wear the hat of a educationist, and then only it can be a optimum solution.
I think on technology, I do want to mention that firstly, I'm not against technology or anything. I think mostly it is used in a misguided manner when it could do a lot more. That's the point, really. So there are areas where it can really help. For example, it can help a lot with children with disabilities. It can also help a lot in regular education, provided you know which is the value added use of technology and which is the value diminishing use of technology. So there are things in any curriculum, for example, practice sums, which are better done using technology, but understanding concepts, by connecting with the context, is better done through human interaction. So it's important to know which aspects of technology really add value and can support teachers. Technology can be very strong in teacher support systems. I'd love to see what I call a recommendation engine, wherein a teacher, performance indicators are clearly presented, and somebody clicks that this part they are not able to do, and immediately technology should throw up three suggestions like a just-in-time system. So there are many things that can be done, but what is happening is that we have not mapped out which is the value-added use of technology and which is the opposite.
Right, right. You have absolutely nailed it, sir. Instead of discussing whether AI would replace teachers or not, we should be talking about how to effectively use AI in scenarios where it can add the maximum value.
Correct.
So thanks for sharing that, sir. We have had a lot of discussions on the past, the present, and the future of the education, both from the perspective of students and teachers. And fortunately, we also touched upon the corporates and the school management. We've talked about students having ownership, having agency, but that would happen if the teachers are enabled to do that. But given the current scenario, what is your message for the students?
I think that same old message is what I would love to give students, which is that make new mistakes. Okay, but before you make a new mistake, you have to first make an old mistake. And then you can make a mistake only if you do things. If you don't do anything, you're not going to make a mistake. So I would really say don't be afraid to try things out. Just do a lot. And the sky doesn't fall down just because you made a mistake. Obviously, I know that students are sensible enough not to do something rash or something which would hurt themselves or somebody else. But they often get afraid of even trying ordinary things out. And I think it's important to take an interest in a wide range of things, and then to make mistakes and keep on doing that. And that's a very valuable learning. If you are not a person who has grown up with a lot of mistakes, you basically don't know much, because you don't even know what is okay or not okay. I'm sort of inclined to mention an experience I have often had with teachers. In a workshop, I just mentioned to them that do you know that the number of days in a year is 367? And a lot of teachers say, of course it is not. I said, then how do you know? They said, no, we have read it. I said, but you haven't added up all the numbers, have you? If you add, you will find that it is 367. You have to convince me that it is not. And then they actually add, and then they show me that it is 365. I said, see, now nobody can fool you, but I didn't manage to push you to actually do the addition. It is because you did not do it yourself. So my message to children is really that don't do things or don't really believe things simply because adults say, teachers say. You must do it yourself. You must explore and find, and yes, you will make mistakes, make new mistakes, keep growing, but keep trying, keep doing, keep engaging. Don't be passive. and don't just be a consumer of things, that whether it is screen or anything else, be an active participant.
Right. Thanks for sharing that, sir. I would like to add here another thing which you said in the MOE Shiksha Samagam about reflection. So that really appealed to me as a person that we should, in all capacities, be reflecting. So is that, and I think that's an important skill for children to develop right from the time they are, in school, because that takes a time to inculcate. Right. So would you like to say something on that?
Yeah. So firstly, I mean, this is an old statement. It's not my own. In the Vedas, it is said that Manan has a higher place than Shravan, which is, reflection is more important than just listening. And Dewey said it that experience that is reflected upon becomes learning. But uh, what I found when we began working in the Indian education system in terms of activity based learning is that a lot of the time the focus was on simply doing something, just being active. So if you make a drawing, if you sing a song, if you play a game, if you fold something and make a paper plane or paper object out of it, doing that, it was seen as that is what learning is. But actually, that's just an action. And if you do not ask yourself, what exactly did I do? I changed my way. Why did I do it that way? Did it work or did it not work, and why? What will I do, and what will I connect it with? Then how are you going to get into learning? And in fact, it's not just even a generic thing, it's a very particular specific thing. For example, mathematical concepts, if you do not speak them out in language, you basically cannot develop those concepts. Just doing by with your hands is not enough. You have to use language, and for that you have to think about it. So in fact, I've slowly moved to the position where I say the business of education is the business of reflection. How do we actually reflect on everything that we do? My day's routine, when I what time do I wake up? Why is that the good thing, right thing? What is a better way to wake up, etc. I mean, you need to be thinking. We say we want a child to be a thinking person. What we really mean is that we need a reflecting person who thinks about the things they do. Am I doing the thing which, whatever I've done, was that inevitable? Could it have been done differently? Was it right? Was it wrong? That could be in a very ordinary physical manner, that I want to place something in such a way it doesn't fall down. It could be something which is more moral. Should I have returned that object to that person or not? To it could be philosophical. Is that a best way to live? So on. So, but the point is, that we need to generate this ability to analyze, to connect, to infer, to extend in our children. And that's when you create autonomous people who can move beyond hierarchies. And as I said, if the general thrust is towards a more democratic way of living, then it is unfair to say that children shall think for themselves, but will be told what to think. That is not going to happen. So that's why I believe that reflection is very, very critical. It is part of learning in any case. It's also the objective of education, that only in a society of thinking beings we can really flourish. And we cannot flourish in a society where everybody is merely a follower, which we now call WhatsApp University. And then the results are before us. So education has to generate that ability to seriously reflect.
Absolutely, sir. That is a very, very powerful thought, and thanks for sharing that. So, message for children: make mistakes, be an active creator, and reflect on your learning, reflect on your thoughts, and don't follow the WhatsApp University. That is absolutely a very dangerous thing. Thanks for sharing that, sir. And finally, what is the message for the parents?
Very often parents feel that their children don't read, and I have asked them, do you read? So children do what parents do. Things I would like to tell parents: one is that It's take an interest in what your children are interested in. You have to see the world from their point of view, and then you can understand and connect better with them. If you don't connect with them, but you simply want them to do whatever you are saying, then you're after a certain age, children will stop paying attention to you because they know you're not really interested in them, and they will also learn how to pretend to do things to show you, but they will not really be doing them. So that connection which we talked about among everyone, that connection has to be there between parents and children. And unfortunately, here technology is again the villain, that I see a lot of young parents out with their kids and paying attention to their phone, but not to the child. I mean, just to mention this, it's a slightly disconnected point, but I will mention it still, that when a child begins reading uh, in a parent's lap, and the parent is reading out let's say a picture book, there are hardly any words in it. What remains with the child is that feeling of that warmth, security, love, and affection within which reading took place. This child, whenever she reads later in the rest of her life, that feeling will keep there somewhere in the back of the mind, and this child will be a reader who reads for pleasure. If a child is learning to read under coercion, you're not even knowing the spelling. What is this? This child will always feel that reading is something which is necessary evil. This child will read only because, out of compulsion, and will be a utilitarian reader, will read for exams but never for pleasure. And this child life will be totally different from that of another child who loves reading for the sake of reading. So I think, that to parents, I would say that taking an interest in your child, being interested in your child's worldview, thoughts, those are things that matter. And a second, slightly different sort of thing is that you encourage your child to take up a wider range of things. If you want to be ready for the 21st century, you cannot be ready by going into a small niche area. So it's okay if there's some extraordinary talented child who's fantastic in music or sports, that is okay. But for most children, what will happen is that they will be able to do a wide variety of things. They might enjoy some dancing, some reading, some acting, some drawing, painting, whatever, and traveling, trekking. I don't know. There'll be a range of things, and nowadays through technology, again a wider range of things. So encourage it. The wider the range that a child has, especially at a younger age, and slowly it will narrow down. By the time the child is in class 10th, 12th, it may come down, and surely later might become even narrower. But it's that wide range that actually acts as a resource for the child, and that gives you the ability to deal with new situations that you are going to face, and connects you with a wider range of people, actions, things, etc. So I would say that these are two messages that I would have for parents. Connect with your child and encourage a wider range of interactions and wider range of interests in your child.
That's a very useful message, sir. Thanks for sharing. And especially the second message, as a parent myself, I know that there is, as a child grows up, there is so much of pressure of academics, marks, that, all the other things start dropping off over a period of time. But as you said, that all that add to the richness of the experience, the learning for a child. So
Actually, the people who are successful in the world is made not by people who were toppers. It is made by people who are seriously interested in what they do.
right. By people who are curious, creative, problem solvers, right? So these are the words that we have, that's the focus that we have, and we have to work on the way to help create these abilities in our children. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing all these nuggets of wisdom for everyone in the spectrum of learning. We have talked about, of course, the children, but the teachers, the school management. We talk about the corporates, and for everyone, you shared a lot of, not just the theoretical guidelines, but also examples from the field where children who were non-responsive, non-communicative, when they were asked a question which they have experience already in life, they opened up, and the learning also happened simultaneously. So all these examples, cases, these takeaways are very much implementable. Your suggestion for teachers to start where they are, start small, and then build up from there is also very empowering. So thanks for coming over, sir, and sharing your wisdom. There are several, out of our discussion, there are more points that, I would like to talk upon, and probably we can do another session on them. But of course, several takeaways from this session itself. So thanks for sharing these, sir.
Thank you. And I'm open to questions or comments from anyone who listens anywhere. And it'll be a pleasure to connect.
Yes, we will share your email ID with our audiences, and like Sir has said, please feel free to reach out to Sir, ask questions, and any comments, any questions, queries that you have for him, where he can share his wisdom. Any challenges you are facing as a teacher, as a parent, Sir has a lot of experience at the ground level, and I'm sure that you'll find a solution and answer to the problem that you are facing there. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.